What if the very first spark of faith did not begin with gods, rituals, or temples, but with a silent moment on a forgotten mountain millions of years ago? Imagine an early human ancestor pausing at the edge of a cliff, staring into a world he could not explain. That instant of awe, fear, and wonder might have been the birthplace of something we now call spirituality. When you strip humanity down to its earliest form, before language, before myth-making, before organized belief systems, what remains is a raw instinct to seek meaning in the unknown. And this instinct may have ignited far earlier than we have ever dared to imagine. Consider how fragile early life was. Lightning splitting the sky, shadows moving between the trees, the echo of a predator in the dark. Survival depended not only on strength, but on perception. And perception gradually evolved into interpretation. Could that primal interpretation be the seed of what would later shape entire civilizations? When those first hominids looked toward a towering mountain and felt something they could not name, were they sensing the first pulse of the sacred? This is where our journey begins, at the crossroads between fear and fascination, where the mind took its first step into symbolic thinking. If spirituality emerged long before formal religions, it means the earliest humans were already trying to understand forces they could not see but felt deeply. This search for meaning did not appear suddenly. It grew slowly, shaped by environment, danger, curiosity, and the overwhelming power of natural landscapes. And among all landscapes, mountains held a unique place. They rose above the ordinary world, unreachable, mysterious, a natural bridge between earth and sky. Even without words, early humans may have sensed that these heights carried something beyond their comprehension. And before we move deeper into this ancient story, take a moment to reflect on your own experience. Has there ever been a moment when the world around you felt bigger than logic could explain? These early sensations, mirrored across millions of years, may connect you more closely to those first humans than you realize. If this perspective intrigues you, share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know how this opening resonates with your own search for meaning, and leave a like so the message reaches more curious minds. Also, check whether you are already subscribed to the channel, because what comes next will expand this journey even further as we continue unfolding how spirituality may have taken its very first form. As we move deeper into the origins of early human awareness, we enter the realm where consciousness began to expand beyond mere survival. The emergence of symbolic thinking did not happen in a single moment. It was a slow and subtle transformation shaped by environment, perception, and the constant need to interpret an unpredictable world. Early hominids started noticing patterns, the cycle of day and night, the rhythm of seasons, the consequences of movement and stillness. Such observations gradually formed the foundation of a new mental landscape, one capable of assigning meaning to events that had no immediate connection to physical survival. This shift was monumental, for it represented the beginning of an inner world that stretched far beyond instinct. Imagine an early human ancestor encountering the bones of an animal, arranged in a way that seemed intentional, even if the intention was unknown. Over time, recognizing patterns in nature may have encouraged the mind to wonder whether some forces were guiding these occurrences. The ability to perceive these patterns marked the birth of symbolic consciousness, a cognitive leap that allowed the earliest humans to process reality on a deeper level. They no longer reacted solely to what they saw. They began to interpret what it might represent. In this space between perception and interpretation, spirituality found fertile ground. This evolution of consciousness intertwined with the emotional intensity of early life. Fear of the dark, awe before a storm, comfort in the presence of fire, the relief of safety after danger passed. Each experience created internal impressions that could not be easily explained. As these impressions accumulated, early humans started to attach significance to places, objects, and natural phenomena. A cave that provided refuge during a storm could become more than a shelter. It could become a place charged with meaning. A mountain that dominated the horizon might evoke a sense of distance between the human and the mysterious. Symbolic consciousness allowed these emotions to crystallize into something enduring. This mental expansion also influenced how groups interacted. The sharing of observations, gestures, and reactions created early forms of collective understanding. When a group consistently treated a location with caution or reverence, the behavior itself became part of a symbolic system. These shared interpretations strengthened group cohesion, giving early communities a subtle yet powerful framework that shaped decisions and rituals. Even without spoken language, meaning traveled through expressions, movements, and repeated actions. What began as individual impressions evolved into communal perceptions that laid the psychological groundwork for future spiritual systems. And as these cognitive abilities continued to grow, the human mind moved closer to forming the earliest narratives capable of linking the visible world to invisible possibilities, opening the path for the next stage in this ancient journey. As symbolic consciousness expanded, early humans began to perceive certain landscapes as more than physical formations. Among these, mountains stood out as powerful triggers for spiritual imagination. For a hominid living millions of years ago, a towering peak was not simply a geological structure, it was an overwhelming presence that influenced movement, climate, and the emotional atmosphere of daily life. The mountain's immensity created a natural contrast between the human scale and the forces shaping the earth, provoking the kind of awe that nudged the mind toward deeper interpretations. In this emerging mental world, the mountain became a silent teacher of mystery, a fixed point that invited questions long before language existed to express them. Fear played an essential role in this early spiritual awakening. The unknown was everywhere, but mountains amplified its effect. Weather changed abruptly, shadows stretched unpredictably, and sounds echoed in ways that distorted their sources. These experiences ignited primal emotions, curiosity, dread, alertness, that often blended into one another. Early humans, seeking patterns and meanings, could have sensed that the mountain held answers or secrets hidden from ordinary perception. In this way, fear did not merely threaten survival, it expanded the mind's willingness to consider forces beyond physical reality. At the same time, the mountain's stability conveyed an opposing emotion: safety. While valleys and forests shifted constantly with predators, storms, and migrations, the mountain remained. Its permanence may have suggested that it belonged to a different order of existence, something more enduring than the fragile lives of the early humans who wandered at its base. This contrast between danger and stability created a psychological tension that encouraged interpretation. The mountain seemed both protective and intimidating, familiar yet unreachable. Such duality is a powerful catalyst for spiritual thought, giving rise to the sense that the world contained layers of meaning not immediately visible. The interaction between environment and early cognition deepened this effect. As hominids explored new territories, the mountain frequently acted as a reference point, shaping their routes and seasons. Its silhouette carved itself into memory, becoming part of the group's collective perception. Over generations, these impressions would form the roots of spiritual symbolism, embedding the idea that elevated places were closer to powerful, unseen forces. Even without myth or ritual, the mountain already lived in the minds of early humans as a threshold between the ordinary and the sacred. As this psychological landscape developed, the mountain continued to shape human imagination, preparing the ground for the earliest proto-rituals that would soon transform scattered impressions into the first expressions of the sacred. As early humans continued to navigate the overwhelming presence of the mountain, their inner world grew increasingly shaped by moments of silence, darkness, and firelight. Long before structured religious rituals existed, these first humans were already experimenting with actions that hinted at a spiritual impulse. Picture a small group gathered at the entrance of a cave as night fell, the fire casting long, trembling shadows across the stone walls. The flickering light transformed the space, awakening a sense of strangeness that blended danger with fascination. For hominids whose perception was developing rapidly, this interplay of shadow and flame may have opened the door to the earliest forms of symbolic behavior. In these gatherings, sound played an equally transformative role. A simple rhythmic tapping of stones, the crackle of burning wood, or the echo of a low hum inside a cavern could alter the emotional atmosphere and anchor the group's attention in a collective experience. These sensory encounters were primitive, yet powerful. They structured moments where the group acted in unison, moving beyond instinctive reactions toward shared intention. Such moments may have been the first proto-rituals, not designed with meaning but infused with meaning through repetition, emotion, and the sense of entering a space beyond ordinary activity. The mountain amplified these early practices. Its caves, overhangs, and rocky enclosures created environments where sound behaved unpredictably and light took on unfamiliar shapes. These distortions were not merely observed, they were felt. Emotional responses to these sensations could have encouraged humans to repeat actions that evoked them, reinforcing the idea that certain places and behaviors carried special significance. Over time, returning to the same sites during powerful natural events, storms, sunsets, or cold nights, may have strengthened the association between environment and inner experience, deepening the impression that the mountain itself was a gateway to forces they could sense but could not fully grasp. What makes these proto-rituals profound is not their complexity, but their psychological impact. They helped early humans navigate fear, process awe, and create shared emotional memory. These practices seeded the idea that meaning could be shaped collectively, not only through observation but through coordinated action. The fire became more than warmth. It became a focal point of attention. The cave became more than shelter. It became a chamber of impressions. And the mountain became more than terrain. It became a silent witness to the birth of the sacred. Before we move on, I want to hear from you. How do you imagine these first ritual-like moments unfolding at the base of a primordial mountain? Share your thoughts in the comments and tell me what image comes to your mind when you picture those early humans encountering the mysterious for the very first time. As early humans refined these proto-rituals around fire and shadow, another force quietly reshaped their perception of the world, the sky itself. Long before astronomy existed as a discipline, the earliest hominids were already noticing the steady patterns that governed the heavens. The slow movement of stars, the recurring phases of the moon, and the sun's predictable rise and fall formed a silent rhythm above them. This cosmic order contrasted sharply with the chaos of life on the ground, and such contrast may have prompted the first attempts to understand the universe not only through instinct, but through interpretation. The vastness of the sky offered a canvas for meaning, one that early humans could observe but never touch, yet always feel. Imagine a group of early humans resting on a high ledge of the mountain at night, gazing upward as points of light pierced the darkness. These luminous patterns were unlike anything in their everyday environment. The stars neither hunted nor hid, neither approached nor retreated. They moved with slow deliberation, as though governed by rules beyond the reach of earthly danger. This predictable movement may have evoked a sense of stability, something rare and precious in a world dominated by threat and uncertainty. Over generations, this stability could have encouraged early hominids to view the sky as a realm of significance, perhaps even a source of order that influenced their lives in ways they could not yet explain. The mountain, rising above the plains and forests, served as a natural observatory. From its slopes, early humans could witness the sunrise breaking over distant horizons, storms gathering from afar, and the moon illuminating the night in shifting intensities. These elevated vantage points intensified their emotional responses to celestial events. A sudden meteor streaking across the sky might have been perceived, not as a random occurrence, but as a meaningful sign. A lunar eclipse, casting an eerie glow over the mountain, may have stirred fear and wonder in equal measure. Such experiences shaped the emerging mental framework that allowed early humans to imagine that the universe was not silent but communicating. As the mind evolved, so did the ability to create continuity between Earth and sky. The movement of celestial bodies might have inspired ideas of cycles, renewal, and unseen forces guiding the natural world. Seasonal migrations, plant growth, and shifts in climate could become linked, consciously or unconsciously, to these heavenly patterns. This link did not require language. It relied on repetition, memory, and emotion. The mountain's prominence only strengthened these associations, acting as a symbolic bridge between the human world and the unreachable realm above. In this growing cognitive landscape, the sky became more than a backdrop. It became a source of meaning that deepened the spiritual imagination of early humans, preparing them for the next transformative step in their evolving understanding of existence. As early humans continued to interpret the rhythms of the sky from the vantage points of mountain slopes, another force emerged that pushed their inner world toward deeper spiritual reflection: the mystery of death. Few experiences could rival its emotional impact. A fallen member of the group, once warm and responsive, suddenly still and unreachable, challenged the developing human mind in ways nothing else could. Death was final, yet its meaning was not immediately understood. This tension between permanence and uncertainty triggered questions that symbolic consciousness was just beginning to form. In trying to make sense of this transformation, early humans may have taken one of their first significant steps into what we now consider spiritual thought. The mountain often served as the backdrop for these profound moments. Its caves and sheltered spaces provided natural sites where bodies might be left temporarily or observed before being abandoned to the elements. These encounters were not neutral. They left emotional imprints difficult to ignore. The contrast between the vast, enduring mountain and the fragile human life created a powerful psychological tension. If the mountain could persist through storms, seasons, and countless generations, why did humans vanish so quickly? This disparity may have fueled the earliest questions about continuity, existence, and what might lie beyond physical form. As groups repeatedly faced the loss of their own members, emerging cognitive abilities allowed them to notice details that once held no particular meaning. The posture of a body, the lingering familiarity of a face, or the quiet stillness of a resting place could evoke emotions that transcended instinct. These impressions may have encouraged early humans to handle their dead with a growing sense of intention, whether through placement, covering, or returning to the same locations. Such actions, even if not fully deliberate by modern standards, signaled an evolving awareness of significance attached to the transition between life and death. Environmental cues reinforced this perception. The cycle of decay mirrored changes observed in nature: plants emerging from soil, animals transforming through seasons, storms gathering and dissolving. Witnessing these patterns might have suggested that death, too, followed an unseen process. The mountain, with its enduring presence and dramatic landscapes, intensified these associations by offering a setting where life and loss coexisted visibly. A cave used for shelter one day could become a burial space the next, embedding emotional memory within the environment itself. Over time, these experiences shaped a mental landscape where death was no longer merely an event, but a doorway into an unknown realm. Within this evolving understanding, early humans began forming impressions that would eventually contribute to the earliest myths, anchoring their spiritual imagination more deeply in the world around them and within themselves. As early humans continued grappling with the mysteries of life and death, the growing ability to create symbolic meaning began to weave scattered impressions into the earliest forms of myth. These proto-narratives were not yet stories in the modern sense, but rather emotional frameworks that helped explain experiences, too overwhelming to face without interpretation. The mountain, the sky, the storm, the fire, and the lifeless body of a fallen companion all contributed fragments to a mental tapestry that was gradually becoming coherent. For the first time, humans were not merely reacting to the world. They were crafting internal explanations that allowed them to navigate the unknown with a sense of continuity. Within small groups, shared experiences amplified these early interpretations. If a lightning strike on the mountain coincided with a moment of fear, or if an unusual event occurred near the resting place of the dead, the emotional impact lingered. Over time, these repeated associations may have evolved into structured impressions. The idea that certain places held power, or that unseen forces influenced the world. These impressions, carried through gestures, glances, and emotional reactions, would naturally blend into group memory. Even without words, meaning passed from one generation to the next through imitation and shared emotional cues. This gradual formation of myth served a practical psychological purpose. Early humans needed ways to navigate fear, uncertainty, and the unpredictable forces of nature. Proto-myths provided a mental tool for understanding events that seemed to defy immediate explanation. A violent storm rolling across the mountain might not be seen merely as weather, but as an expression of a hidden presence. A sudden clearing of the sky after danger had passed might be experienced as reassurance. These interpretations helped stabilize internal states, allowing early humans to feel a sense of relationship with the forces shaping their environment. The rise of myth also influenced group cohesion. Shared beliefs, however rudimentary, created a common psychological space where individuals could align their actions and expectations. A cave associated with safety or danger, a mountain peak regarded with caution, or a ritual gesture performed during tense moments, all contributed to the formation of cultural memory. The mountain, once simply a massive geological structure, became a symbolic anchor where meaning accumulated over generations. And as these impressions deepened, the earliest myths became essential threads tying the community together, shaping identity and collective imagination. Before we continue, I would like to hear your perspective. What kind of myth do you imagine forming among early humans as they face the vast, unpredictable forces of their world? Share your thoughts in the comments and describe the first narrative that comes to your mind. As the earliest myths took shape in the minds of ancient humans, another crucial force began to drive the evolution of spiritual thought: the transmission of ideas. Even before formal language emerged, early hominids possessed the ability to communicate through gestures, expressions, shared actions, and emotional cues. These primitive forms of communication were far more powerful than they appear at first glance. They allowed beliefs, impressions, and symbolic meanings to spread across generations, shaping the cognitive landscape of entire groups. In this way, spirituality did not grow in isolation. It expanded through interaction, memory, and repetition. Imagine one individual experiencing a powerful moment on the mountain: a sudden storm, a strange sound echoing through a cave, or the quiet stillness surrounding the resting place of the dead. That experience, charged with emotion, would imprint itself deeply. But the true transformation happened when the individual shared that reaction with others. A gesture of reverence, a cautious expression, or a repeated ritualistic movement could communicate significance without needing words. Over time, these behaviors became part of the group's shared identity, embedding meaning within collective memory. This early form of communication created a bridge between personal experience and communal understanding. Through repeated actions, certain locations became recognized as significant. The cave where echoes lingered might be approached differently, with a subtle reverence or heightened awareness. The ridge overlooking the stars could become a favored gathering place, associated with wonder or reflection. The mountain peak itself, often unreachable, might evolve into a symbol of distance between the human world and whatever mysterious forces shaped their lives. Because these impressions were shared, repeatedly, they gained emotional weight, guiding how future generations perceived their environment. The transmission of ideas also strengthened group cohesion. When individuals reacted similarly to certain phenomena, whether fear, awe, or curiosity, the shared response unified the group. These shared emotional patterns gradually shaped expectations and behaviors, reinforcing a psychological system that hinted at early spirituality. Over generations, these patterns evolved into proto-traditions, consistent ways of interpreting, remembering, and responding to the world. The mountain, already a powerful symbol, became a repository for these inherited impressions, its presence reminding each generation of the ones before it. As symbolic communication continued to evolve, the human mind gained the capacity not only to observe the world, but to construct meaning from it and transmit that meaning across time. This ability laid the foundation for the complex spiritual eye, narratives that would eventually emerge, marking a profound shift in the way early humans understood their place in the vast and mysterious landscape around them. As these early forms of communication strengthened and ideas flowed across generations, one symbol rose above all others in shaping the spiritual imagination of ancient humans: the mountain itself. Its presence was more than physical. It became a universal archetype embedded in the earliest layers of human consciousness. Across different landscapes and migrating groups, the mountain represented something enduring, unreachable, and profoundly mysterious. Even without formal language or structured belief systems, early humans sensed that elevated places were different. Zones where the earth met the sky, where the familiar world stretched toward a realm that felt distant and charged with unseen forces. From the lower valleys and dense forests, the mountain towered as a constant reminder of scale and perspective. Climbing. Even a short distance offered a drastic shift in perception. Winds grew stronger, temperatures shifted, and the horizon widened. These sensory changes confirmed to early humans that the mountain existed on a threshold between worlds. It was a place where ordinary rules seemed to bend, where visibility extended far beyond normal experience, and where the sky felt closer in a way that stirred instinctive wonder. This heightened perception fueled the belief that mountains were not just landmarks, but gateways to something beyond human reach. The interplay between danger and fascination deepened this archetype. Steep cliffs, sudden rockfalls, and unpredictable weather made mountains perilous. Yet the same danger inspired awe. Events that occurred high on the slopes, lightning strikes, violent storms, or moments of sudden stillness, created impressions that shaped early emotional memory. Over time, these impressions blended into a collective understanding. The mountain was a place of power, a space where human presence felt small and where the forces governing nature might be closer and more visible. Caves and shelters on mountain slopes further enriched this symbolism. These natural enclosures provided refuge, but also carried a mysterious atmosphere shaped by echoing sounds and shifting firelight. The contrast between the dark interior of a cave and the expansive sky outside intensified the emotional experience, encouraging early humans to associate these spaces with transformation. If the world above the ground represented the unknown and the celestial, and the world deep within the mountain evoked mystery and depth, then the mountain itself became a complete symbolic universe, an axis connecting different layers of existence. As generations passed, the mountain's presence etched itself into group identity. It shaped migration routes, gathering places, burial sites, and moments of collective introspection. Even before myths were formalized, the mountain was already functioning as a spiritual anchor, reflecting humanity's earliest attempts to understand the world's structure. This archetype would echo through countless societies in the millennia to come, but its origins trace back to the silent, instinctive interpretations of those first humans who looked upward and sensed that the sacred might have been born among the peaks long before they had words to describe it. As the symbolic power of the mountain grew within early human groups, the foundations for future religious structures were quietly taking shape. What began as instinctive reactions to landscape, death, fire, and the sky gradually evolved into coherent systems of meaning that wove together memory, emotion, and shared interpretation. These early humans did not yet possess rituals, doctrines, or organized myths, but they carried the raw material from which such systems would emerge. Their world was filled with patterns waiting to be connected, impressions waiting to be shaped, and landscapes waiting to be understood. The mountain, with its towering presence and deep emotional impact, became an axis around which these emerging ideas could revolve. As generations passed, the symbolic associations accumulated into something more structured. The repeated impressions, the storm rolling across the peak, the echoing cave that stirred fear and fascination, the star-filled sky observed from a high ridge, formed a reservoir of meaning. The mind of early humans, already expanding in symbolic complexity, began linking these impressions into early frameworks that resembled the first spiritual systems. These were not yet religions, but they carried essential ingredients: reverence for powerful places, the sense of unseen forces shaping existence, and the belief that meaning extended beyond the visible world. The mountain served as a natural prototype for the sacred. It shaped how early communities organized their movements, chose gathering sites, interpreted celestial events, and remembered their ancestors. The concept of elevation, moving upward from the familiar world into a space that felt closer to the mysterious, created one of the most enduring spiritual motifs in human history. Even later civilizations, thousands of years removed from these early hominids, would echo this same pattern. Sacred peaks, holy summits, temples built on high ground, and myths of divine beings dwelling above ordinary life. The earliest humans planted the seed without knowing it, guided only by instinct, awe, and the escalating power of symbolic consciousness. As these impressions deepened, they prepared humanity for the next great transformation, the creation of structured belief systems that would eventually shape entire cultures. The path from silent impressions to organized religion was not sudden, but it was inevitable once meaning became transferable, repeatable, and emotionally binding. And in this long evolutionary arc, the mountain remained a central figure, anchoring the spiritual imagination of countless generations. Now that you have traveled through this entire journey, if this exploration resonated with you, consider letting me know you were here until the end by leaving a comment with a simple phrase like, "I am here until the end," or another expression that feels natural to you. If this content brought value or opened new perspectives for you, you are welcome to subscribe so you can continue exploring these deeper narratives with me. And if the connection built throughout this story made sense to you, a like on the video helps keep this kind of content alive. There is also another video waiting for you that expands on these ideas in a different direction, so feel free to continue this journey by clicking on it and exploring what comes next.